Hey guys, Mr. Zigner here. We're going to be looking at lesson 1-8, which is properties. There are 4 properties you need to know: associative, commutative, identity, and distributive. Let's get started. So here you can see we're going to look at some vocabulary, the distributive property, and then using equations, some real-world examples, and using the properties to evaluate expressions. So we're going to be looking again, as I said, the commutative, associative, identity, and distributive properties to solve problems. 2 of our new words are equivalent expressions and properties. All right, we're starting off with probably the toughest one, and that is the distributive property. For some reason, there's a couple things in the distributive property that are a little more difficult for some students. Let me see if I can walk you through it. So in words, we're multiplying a sum is an addition problem, by a number. We're going to multiply each addend of the sum, so the 2 numbers that you're adding together, by the number outside of the parentheses. So you can see here, we have 3 times 4 plus 6. But instead of doing what we normally do here, which would be add the parentheses together, 4 plus 6 is of course 10, and 3 times 10 is 30. Now we're going to separate it. First we're going to multiply the 3 times the 4. So here's 3 times 4, which is 12. Then we're going to multiply the 3 times the 6, right here. And of course 3 times 6 is 18. And guess what 12 plus 18 is? Yep, you still get the same answer. Now you might be thinking, well, why do it that way? There's more work involved than just simply adding them together, getting the 10, and multiplying and getting the 30. Well, the reason is because of algebra. We're not always going to know the value of each of the numbers. In this case, we have an A, a B, and a C. So again, all we're going to be able to do is follow the distributive property to simplify the problem. So again, you're going to multiply the number on the outside times the first item in the parentheses, so you have A times B. Then you multiply the number on the outside times the second thing in parentheses, so that's A times C. Notice one other thing I don't think I mentioned. If there's a plus sign in the middle of the parentheses, you're going to continue to use a plus sign. But if there's a minus sign, I think there may be an example coming up like that has a minus sign, then you use a minus sign in the middle. Let's look at some more examples. So we're going to evaluate 8 times 5 plus 7. Well, as you can see, first we multiply the 8 times the 5, then we multiply the 8 times the 7. A little bit of multiplication. 8 times 5 is 40, 8 times 7 is 56. And finishing up with 40 plus 56 is 96. Our turn. So we're using the distributive property to evaluate 4 times 6 plus 3. 4 times 6 plus 3. Okay, again, we're going to multiply the number on the outside times the first thing in parentheses. So 4 times 6. We have a plus sign right here, so we bring a plus sign over. Now we do the number on the outside times the second number in parentheses, so 4 times 3. Well, 4 times 6 is 24, plus 4 times 3 is 12. 24 plus 12, 36. So it looks like our answer is 36. Moving on. Here's one in kind of reverse order. First, they have 6 times 9 plus 6 times 2. Notice the 6 being repeated twice. That number that repeats twice is the number on the outside of the parentheses. Then on the inside, we have this 9 plus 2. So you can see that's right over here, 9 plus 2 on the inside of the parentheses. Well, 9 plus 2 is, of course, 11, and 6 times 11 is 66. So that's the distributive property in reverse. Okay, our turn again. We have 5 plus 3 times 7. Now you might be a little confused because now they have that 7 at the end. The number on the outside is at the end. You could reverse that and just call it 7 times 5 plus 3. There's nothing wrong with that. Or we could just leave it as it is. Let's see if we can get the answer just leaving it like it is. So we're going to multiply the number on the outside times the first thing in parentheses, that would be the 5. We have a plus sign in the middle, so we put a plus sign in the middle. Then the 7 on the outside times the second thing in parentheses. There we go. 7 times 5 is 35. 7 times 3 is 21. And 35 plus 21 is 56. Mr. Harmon has $150 budgeted per day for his hotel and meals. He's going to spend 6 days on vacation. How much will he spend? Well, of course, you're going to multiply that 6 days times $150 per day. The point of this problem is to use the distributive property to multiply mentally. That's right, they want us to do this one in our heads. So how do you do that? Well, I don't know 6 times 150 off the top of my head, but here's what they're suggesting you can do. Break the 150 into 100 plus 50. Now, do you see? It's looking more like the distributive property. Now we just follow our rules. Multiply the number on the outside times the first thing, 6 times 100. Then multiply the number on the outside times the second thing in parentheses, 6 times 50. So we have 600 plus 300, which equals 900. So they're suggesting that you could actually do that all in your head. Well, that's going to take some practice, which we will do tomorrow. Here we have Heidi. She's selling cookies for $2.50 per box for a fundraiser. If she sold 60 boxes, how much money did she raise? Well, it seems to me they're trying to get us to use that method that I just finished on the previous slide, where we're able to do this mentally. Well, let's see if we can do that. All right. So I'm just going to write out what I'm thinking. So I've got 60 boxes of cookies times $2.50 each. Well, can't really do that in my head, but if I break it into 60 times, here we go. So I'm going to make it $2 plus 50 cents. Yeah, I think that's going to be easier because 60 times 2 is 120. And then 60 times that second number in parentheses, the 50 cents. Well, 60 times 50 cents, you know what that is? That's $30. If you bought 60 items that were 50 cents each, that would cost you $30 because each one is half of a dollar. Now 120 plus 30 is of course 150. And there we go. Here are 3 other properties besides the distributive property. Notice we spent a lot of time on the first one, but now they've crammed all 3 of these together. That's because these are pretty much easier than distributive. Let me go through them. Commutative basically tells you that the order in which 2 numbers are added or multiplied does not change the sum or product. So A plus B is the same thing as B plus A. Or using real numbers and multiplication instead, how about 2 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 2. So that's commutative. We just turn around backwards an addition or multiplication problem. Now associative. Now that's where 3 numbers are being grouped when they're again added or multiplied. So that's the same thing as commutative. Let's do an example of this. How about something simple like 1 plus 2 plus 3? With associative, an associate is someone you're friends with, that you hang out with. So we're going to group or make friends out of 1 and 2. So I'm going to put them in parentheses. I'm grouping them together. They are now associated with each other. And what I'm saying is that that's equal to 1 plus 2 plus 3. But now look, I'm going to change the parentheses. Now I'm going to put them around the 2 and the 3. So the only thing that's changed here is it's not the numbers. They both say 1 plus 2 plus 3. But it's where the parentheses go. Now just check this out. It's still the same answer. Here we have 1 plus 2 is 3. Plus 3 is of course 6. Over here we have 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 5. But notice they're still equal. So when we move parentheses around, and I'll show you why we do that a little bit later, we're actually going to get the same answer. And now of course that only works with adding and multiplying. Finally, the identity property. The identity property simply says when you add 0 or you multiply by 1, you get the same number. I'm 46 years old right now. Of course, I won't be in future years when future students watch this video, but right now I'm 46. If I add 0 to that, I still get 46. So adding 0 is one way to do the identity property. I could also multiply by 1. So 46 times 1, here's the other way to do identity, is also 46. So when you start with an amount and you add 0 or multiply by 1, that's the identity property. Now here they're having us use these properties to evaluate some expressions. So we're supposed to do 5 times 13 times 20 in our head. Okay, anyone intimidated by that? Well, it's not too hard. Watch this. With commutative property, if we turn that problem around and actually say 5 times 20, you see that that's a little change from the beginning. What did they do? They switched these two numbers. The 13 and the 20 are reversed. Now, how are you allowed to do that with multiplication? Right here, commutative. We talked about that on the previous slide. Commutative property allows you to reverse two numbers and you get the same answer. So now why did they bother with that? Well, now they're going to use the associative property to put parentheses around the beginning part. That forces you to do that part of the problem first. So 5 times 20, that's easy, 100. And 100 times 13, there we go, 1300. I hope you see how they were trying to make that an easier problem to do in your head. Think the other way to do that is 5 times 13. Yikes, what's 5 times 13? That's going to take a little while to figure out. And then whatever that is, times 20. So doing the problem using the commutative and associative properties really makes it a much easier problem to solve mentally. All right, so what property is being shown here? Let's look at what's going on. We have 4 plus 6 plus 2, 4 plus 6 plus 2. So it's the same thing on both sides. So what's different? Do you see it? It's the parentheses. So we have the parentheses around the 6 and the 2 here and around the 4 and the 6. Guess what that is? Do you remember from the other slides? It's associative. So if you're just moving the parentheses around in an addition or multiplication problem, you have the associative property. We're associating the 6 and the 2 here, and now we're associating the 4 and the 6 right here. Oh, and look at that. That was the last slide. Now, I did go pretty quickly there, although this is a almost 13-minute video. If you need to listen to parts of that again, if you didn't understand part of it, I did go pretty quickly. But the beauty of YouTube is you can just rewind and replay until you understand each of these properties. So check out the questions below the video and do the best you can on those, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.